Diversity and inclusion are really hot topics at the moment. So let's take a little look at what it means to be an inclusive leader and how fostering inclusion can help you. Firstly, what is inclusion? At its simplest level, inclusion is the feeling of belonging and acceptance of your uniquenesses in someone else's space. Inclusion is really just the opposite of isolation and exclusion, which is looking at the feeling of being alone and also being unhappy. So why is inclusion a hot topic, and why is it important for your team? Well, inclusion is really how we go beyond the conversation of diversity. It's more than simply valuing differences. It's about appreciating these differences at an individual level and actually providing a way for us to build respect and value for the perspectives that each person brings. It gives us a way to look at how we turn differences into strengths. We also know that inclusion is strongly linked with psychological safety. And in psychological safety, we see our pathway to innovation, effectiveness, and well-being, such big markers for our workplaces today. Inclusion and psychological safety are strongly linked, and we see this in Tim Clark's work on the 4 stages of psychological safety. In the first stage, inclusion safety, we've had to click over that threshold from exclusion to inclusion, the safety to belong, a very foundational and key part of the story of inclusion. But it doesn't end there. Fostering inclusion and psychological safety is about moving through a number of these stages. We see stage 2, learner safety and the capacity to ask questions. We see stage 3, contributor safety, about offering ideas. And then we hit another threshold, the innovation threshold. And on the other side of that is safety to challenge the status quo, the safety to be able to call up processes, practices, services, business products that aren't meeting the need and challenge them and say, how could we do this differently? So many businesses are pushing for innovation, but it starts and is built right the way back there on inclusion. So here's 3 things we could look at to check up on inclusion. Firstly, how are you going at fair play and fair treatment for everyone? Are you working in a just environment? Are each client treated well? Each employee, each team member, each peer, each colleague? How is fair treatment for all actually playing out? What about diversity climate? Diversity climate is about alignment of perception on policies and practices and rewards. How is this playing out around the concepts of diversity? Are we seeing alignment? Are each person showing up to these policies and practices and exhibiting an agreed way of doing things? But probably the most important checkup you can do is leader inclusiveness. An inclusive leader walks the talk. They model the behaviours and actions that invite others to participate and do this as well. People will contribute when they feel that they are safe and included. So here's some helpful tips for being an inclusive leader. An inclusive leader values diversity as a strength, especially diverse thinking. They're always looking for the alternative way of seeing an idea. They love dissent, and they see dissent as hugely powerful, and it's the road to new ideas. An inclusive leader makes time, space, energy for the onboarding experience. They know that onboarding is the key to making that first threshold jump from exclusion to inclusion. It's such an important part of the story, and sometimes it's left to be a HR process or a tick box exercise, when what it really should be is central to the acceleration of your teams. An inclusive leader knows how to make information and knowledge transparent and accessible for all. Using technology to help you do this, finding ways to give people the ability to connect back into the information that went out that they might have missed on, or that they might need to catch up and listen to again. But most importantly, an inclusive leader checks in consciously and regularly at their own unconscious bias. They walk the talk of inclusive leadership. They do the check-ins, they talk with their teams, and they look carefully at the level of contributions that each person is bringing. If people aren't participating in your meetings, if they're not speaking up, if they're not giving you information, then the first place you need to check in as an inclusive leader is with yourself. If people aren't participating, why not? And what do you need to do to create space that's safe for them to participate? So remember, as leaders, we need to foster a safe workplace for all, but it doesn't stop at inclusion. Inclusion is just part of the journey to help you build really great, amazing workplaces. So if you'd like to work on leader inclusiveness or fostering better inclusion in your teams or psychological safety, we would love to help you. We can help you do a checkup. We can look at the ways to build capability and foster safety that goes all the way from safety to belong through the safety to challenge the status quo.